Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. This time we're going to be doing something that's been requested by numerous people in emails to me and all sorts of other stuff, where they wanted me to do my usual go over the Steam page, which I've done for every single DLC pack that has come out thus far. Real quick, I want to do a little humble brag. Look at that. Look at that. 100%. Isn't it sexy? Alright, let's move on. So, we're just going to go to the DLC for the King and the Warlord, which unfortunately kind of requires me to go to the store because it's a little goofy right now. But, as you can see, I bought it, which I am very happy with my purchase. I cannot wait to get my hands on it. I almost hate that I have to wait as long as I do. Let's do it this way. Warhammer. It'll probably be up there. The King and the Warlord. Good name for a DLC as well. Alright, so let's go ahead and start with the screenshots. The screenshots are always where you can get some fun information. So these are, right here, we're getting a look at some of the new units, Squig Hoppers and Bugman's Rangers. I've already said this in my other video, but the coloration of Bugman's Rangers are fantastic. I love the blue and red color scheme of Clan Angrid. I think it looks great. I'm wondering if it seems that the colors are going to change depending on which faction you play. So I'm kind of wondering what they look like when you play the Everpeak. I almost feel like these are the Everpeak dwarves because this is actually the symbol of Karak, the mountain, because the Everpeak, of course, is the eternal mountain. Then here we got some of the, we got more Bugman's Rangers who have the, you know, you're dealing with Bugman's because they've got the Bugman's insignia on their shields, which is, of course, his famous mug. Also back here, you can see the Regiment of Renown for the dwarves, which is a goblobber, which literally shoots night goblins tied to boulders, which is the funniest fucking thing I've ever seen in my life. There's nothing like that in tabletop. So this thing is fucking hysterical to me. That's so good. It's so good. Of course, it also actually is an extremely terrifying weapon, but we'll get to that later. Of course, then you got your crossbows here, killing a gobbo. Looks like a nasty skulker, actually. It is, because he's wielding dual hand weapons. Which, we'll talk about the nasty skulkers. They're an interesting premise. Then, of course, here you've just kind of got a traditional battlefield. You've got little fire lighting up everywhere. Lots of squigs. Lots of squigs. Spider Riders, Squig Hoppers, Giant, Doom Divers, classics. Then here we've got the new Bolt Thrower, which I am so excited to see because that's kind of the last of the major War Machine line that we're missing from Total War Warhammer. Kind of interesting that they gave us the Bolt Thrower, but not the... oh god, what do the Greenskins call it? The Greenskins also have a Bolt Thrower, but I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. But it's got a goofy name. But it's the cheapest war machine in the game in tabletop. It's like 35 points for a Greenskin Bolt Thrower, and they're super shitty. But if you take enough of them, traditionally they'll work. But they're funny because they're like the only war machine in the game they're the only Bolt Thrower in the game that can misfire because of how badly they're built. Of course, they've got the anti-large thing, and supposedly they're supposed to be really accurate, which I hope is the case, because if there's one thing the dwarves definitely need, it's an accurate anti-large war machine. Because right now you kind of have your cannons, which are anti-large, and they do a lot of damage, but they're not accurate at all. And they also have the longest reload time in the fucking universe, next to, like, Trollhammer torpedoes. So I'm definitely hoping that these not only have I'm hoping they're somewhere between the organ gun range and the cannon range, so like a medium long, so what I would define as long range, but not like super long range. And if they're as accurate as they seem to be advertising they are, I think these are going to be a really good weapon for the dwarves, because hopefully they'll finally provide us with the firepower to take down shit like zombie dragons, Hellsteed, or you know, all the flying crap, which dwarves really struggle with. Then here, of course, you just got the campaign map showing the starting location of Skarsnik, which is Karak Azgaraz, which is right next to Altdorf. very, very dangerous starting location. I think it's actually a really cool hold for Skarsnik to start at, because Skarsnik, because Karak Azgaraz is kind of this hold you can easily forget about playing through the game, because it tends to get wiped off the map really early by the Bretonnians or one of the Empire factions, and it just sort of gets shit on. And the dwarves who are here, which I believe is the Carrick Norn dwarves, they don't do anything a lot of campaigns. Most of the time, best case scenario, they'll take over their little mountain range and then they just sit there. They're a pretty defensive faction when they're not declaring war on everybody. You can see Carrick Ziflin in the background, but I think this is going to be a really cool starting location. And of course, there's these two, Skabla and Skarsnik, in a very traditional pose that's actually very close to their tabletop pose, except for Skarsnik looks like he's getting some kisses from Gobla, which probably smells like corpses. Here, this looks like it's showcasing one of the new maps. It's an underway map that actually has giant mushroom stalks everywhere in a big chasm, or water? Maybe that's water. Yeah, it's water. It's got reflections. I always will take new maps. New maps just make the game more exciting. This is the outside of Carrick 8 Peaks, which I think is probably one of the most gorgeous mountain maps in the game right now. I feel like we have a definite shortage of these maps that let you fight on the outskirts of the major cities. I think are super awesome, and I'm really glad they're adding more of them to the game. Like the outskirts of Altdorf, and then this is the outskirts of Carrick 8 Peaks. I think these maps do a really good job to help give the feel of the scope of the cities. I only hope that one day we get DLC that focuses on like a really unique form of siege maps. Like, it'd be really cool if maybe when the Skaven come out, if they designed a new 8 Peaks map that was like an open field map but underground. You know what I mean? Because the underground maps tend to be really linear. It'd be nice if we kind of got more of the regular format, but also underground. But we'll see. Here, this shows the starting location of Belegar Ironhammer. He starts with his allies at Karak Izor, who are helping him fund this expedition, I guess, which is a pretty crazy starting position as well. And of course, here are his starting buff, which are his 4 ancestors, who we'll talk about later. They are a curious subject. Then, of course, this final screenshot just shows some more fighting outside of the hold. So, no further ado, let's go ahead and move on. How nice of them to have animated stuff here. Slows my crap down. Alright, so this is our second Lord pack, bolstering the forces of the Greenskins and the Dwarves, which are much needed, in my opinion. We get, of course, 2 new Legendary Lords, new quest chains, which we'll talk about, magic items and skill trees. I kind of wish they would go more into depth about the magic items they had. Like, there are so many times that you'll play and like a random magic item will come up and you'll be like, oh, this is cool, I didn't know this was in the game. I really think CA needs to like have on their wiki a link that posts like all of the magic items in the game. I think that would be something that would be really good for the players to have, just so you can like see like the lore and stuff. I think it'd be neat, because they usually have like a little 2 or 3 sentences. And then we've got our little fluff part here. The time is nigh for Clan Angron to reclaim Karak 8 Peaks from the Groby despoilers. Belegar Ironhammer, clan leader and direct descendant of King Lund, the last dwarf to rule the ancestral hold, has inherited a bitter legacy of hatred and resentment. Even now he marshals his throng, making ready to strike out from Karak Izor. Pardon me. With the spirits of his fabled ancestors returned to fight by his side, Belegar will see his oaths fulfilled and pass into legend himself. Meanwhile, Skarsnik, the self-proclaimed Night Goblin Warlord of Karak 8 Peaks, has taken leave of the hold. On a squig hunting excursion in the Grey Mountains east of Bretonnia, he operates from his base at Karak Azgaraz, when word reaches him of Belegar's intent. Worse still, the tricksy goblins minding Karak 8 Peaks have taken the hold in defiance of Skarsnik's iron will. Intolerable, sneaky, mutinous gits. 2 legends then, both hell-bent on claiming the ancient dwarf hold for themselves. Their destinies entwined. The king and the warlord must face one another in a final desperate battle to determine the true ruler of Karak 8 Peaks. I'm going to say it right now. If there is not a quest battle at the end of Belegar and Skarsnik's campaign to fight the other one, so like when you play Belegar, like your final long campaign victory is to kill Skarsnik in a big fight like the Fall of Man, I'm gonna be pissed. Like, it won't be the end of the world, but that would be such a missed opportunity. I feel like they really need to milk these rivalries, because like with God, I'm having such a brain fart all of a sudden. With Khazrak, the Fall of Man is such a good climactic final battle that really makes you feel like your faction won the campaign. You know, like you feel like you won. Really wish they would do that with everybody else. All right, so let's start with my personal favorite part of this DLC so far, which is Belegar Ironhammer, just because I'm a sucker for his tabletop model, which is gorgeous, and if you haven't seen it, you should. Ancestral heir of Karak 8 Peaks, King Belegar has a terrible and glorious destiny to fulfill. He has sworn an oath to reclaim the fallen dwarf hold from the greenskin usurpers, despite the mountainous odds he faces. Haha, I get it, because there's mountains in the way. Karak 8 Peaks represents more than Belegar's birthright, however. In terms of prestige and wealth, it is second only to Karak itself, and if Belegar can reclaim it in the name of Clan Angrund, he will gain access to the ancestral tombs and the rich trove of ancient and powerful rune weapons which lies within. Unique start position. Belegar begins the grand campaign with ownership of the walled settlement of Karak Izor in Border Prince's territory. So he actually starts off closer to the 8 Peaks, but his campaign debuff is worse than Skarsnik's. Let's see. When chosen to lead a grand campaign, Belegar begins play with the spirits of his ancestors as his companion heroes. King Lund the Ironhammer, who is a Thane, Hakenhoff Stonebeard, who is a Thane, Dramar Hammerfist, who is a Master Engineer, and Thrody Ironbrow, who is a Runesmith. Excuse me. Are ethereal heroes with all the benefits the ethereal trait provides. So that essentially means they can't be slowed down by any type of terrain, which happens more often than you probably realize, and they are also very, very high damage mitigation against anything but magic. And then, of course, Belegar gains early access to the new Dwarf Rangers through the Ranger Outposts building. He also has the Siege Attacker trait, enabling him to attack walled settlements without building siege equipment first, which is crucial for him because you're probably not going to want to waste time getting siege weapons with him with your starting army due to the upkeep. Until he captures Karak 8 Peaks, however, Belegar suffers increased unit upkeep cost to his entire army. They're not stating the amount of the increased percentage. I've heard anything from 50% to 20%, so depending on how it is, it sounds like it's going to make it really hard. And then, of course, quests. Belegar may embark on quests to attain his 2 legendary items, the Shield of Defiance and the powerful ancestral rune hammer, the Hammer of Angrund. So let's take a moment to talk about this. Belegar, this whole thing is so awesome. It's just really hard to point it out, I guess. Like, the fact that I feel like getting an entirely new faction that has all these neat little knickknacks to it, you know, the fact that he starts with a unique type of unit that he's, building, early, that you're getting those early Dwarf Rangers, really like that. You're not starting off with a tier 1 building in just regular dwarves, you're starting with a tier 1 building in Dwarf Rangers, which I think is really cool. Of course, this is the one thing that kind of I feel like 70% in favor of this. Belegar beginning play with the spirits of his ancestors helping him out as heroes. I understand why they did it, and it's a cool concept. I just feel from a lore perspective, it's really goofy as fuck. The idea that his ancestor, I get that he's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna fulfill my oath, and I'm gonna die trying, and this is the 4th siege of Karak 8 Peaks, and we're gonna do it or die, let's go, and his ancestors, empower him, but the fact that they're actually physically manifesting and, fighting alongside him, and none of the dwarves are freaking out about, ghosts, it's really bizarre to me, because one thing that I feel like the game doesn't get across very well is that dwarves are super anal about the dead, staying dead. That's a really big deal to dwarves, which is why they hate the vampire counts and the Tomb King so much. Those things are an ultimate perversion of one of the dwarves' crucial beliefs. So the fact that they're sort of coming back to help him, I feel like the dwarves would get over it if there was a long discussion about it, and I know the game's just accept it and move on, because you're going to need them. Because I'll tell you what, with this increased unit upkeep, even if it's as small as 10%, potentially going up to as high as 50%, maybe higher. I would be really surprised if it was higher than 50. But even if it's 10, 20, 30%, that's going to be a big fuck you to your campaign. That means that with Belegar, you're going to have a really hard time expanding your empire because you're not going to be able to defend it with a lot of armies. You know, you're going to have to be really careful about how you play. You know, he's going to be someone where you're going to have to really manage your resources very crucially, build up a lot of finances so that you can play aggressive and get down to 8 peaks so that this buff goes away. However, this also means that the moment you claim 8 peaks, you're probably going to be a fucking monster by that point. That being said, I think it's so cool. His very hard campaign, I think, is going to be just crazy fun to play. I think it's going to be a very, very enjoyable campaign. Starting Karak Izor, that sounds fine. Whatever, cool. Alright, so let's go ahead and move on to Skarsnik. Also, it's cool and all that they tell us what the quest items do. I kind of wish that this was like what they did with Volkmar, where they said what they do instead of just what they are. Skarsnik. Skarsnik is the chieftain of the Crooked Moon tribe, and is widely acknowledged as the most powerful night goblin in the World's Edge Mountains, and by that they actually mean the world, but for some reason they just said that. This reputation was earned through devious machinations, relentless spite, and a wholesale brutality rare even among his pernicious race. A vicious melee fighter in his own right, what makes him truly formidable is his favorite pet, the giant cave squig, Gobla. The beast's colossal teeth and voracious appetite make it a horrifying spectacle on the battlefield. To Gobla, enemy units are as much perambulating smorgasbord as a physical foe. I have no idea what this word means, and shame on those Brits for even bothering to use it. Get over yourselves, CA. Unique starting position. Skarsnik begins in Karak Azgaraz in the West Grey Mountains, having left Karak 8 peaks to go squig hunting. I'm going to give 1,000 points to CA right now because they actually gave a lore explanation for why Skarsnik is where he is. And I want them to have a full round of applause from anyone who cares to see them, because this is a huge thing as a lore buff for me, that some of the legendary lores just end up in really fucking weird places. Some of them they bothered to explain, like Ungrim Iron Fist they explained, but like some of them are not as well explained. Like Kimmler's was one of the weaker ones. So was Azhag's. Like Azhag just sort of got dragged along with Grimgor's Wall and was like, whatever, I'm just gonna do this, which was super lame in my opinion. I would have much preferred Azhag to have been properly explained like they did here with Skarsnik. It doesn't even take that much. It just takes a couple sentences of like, here's this lore reason why this character goes to this place. And I feel like on some of the guys they released at the start, when the game dropped, so like Kimmler and Azhag in particular being the biggest problems, are really weak. And Ungrim's explanation wasn't horrible, but it was kind of weak. But this is awesome. Great explanation right there. Alright, campaign bonuses. When chosen to lead a grand campaign, Skarsnik begins play with Gobla, who you always have, which is great. It's going to make him probably really fun in melee and be really cool looking. I'm glad CA didn't make Gobla like a champion or a unit or something. And a Goblin Big Boss hero. Skarsnik also has unique skills which buff Goblin units, being reduced upkeep unit for Goblin units, and his particularly sneaky nature means his hero's actions cost less and garner greater experience gains. So this is super crucial. So while I think with Belegar, his heroes being ethereal probably means you're going to use them primarily in battle and very, very rarely on the campaign map because they're ethereal. So you should really make use of the fact that they take virtually no damage and just go ham. And any heroes you recruit afterwards, you would probably want to use for campaign stuff. Though you might want to make use of some of the campaign bonuses for like the engineer. Because if you're not running a lot of war machines, the engineer can be, he's alright. Though with the rangers, he might be a lot better because he can give buffs to missile infantry. But with Skarsnik, starting with the big Goblin Big Boss, which is terrible in combat, but since his heroes' actions cost less and garner greater experience gains, that Big Boss is going to be a bitch because he's going to be so good at just constantly assassinating shit. It's going to be fucking infuriating to play against. However, he does come with the debuff, which is for Skarsnik. Skarsnik can only recruit orcs in Karak 8 peaks. So, what this basically means is with Belegar, you can have all the regular stuff, but everything costs more. Skarsnik, you can only have goblins, which means your armies in general will be worse, though Skarsnik makes them cheaper, and he probably could be... I imagine he has a brand new red tree. He probably has a very unique red tree compared to the orc war bosses. I imagine it'll be similar, but probably better, more catered to goblins. And with the Night Goblin war boss being your new general type, we're going to see the same thing there. I'm really excited for Skarsnik's campaign, and I think a lot of people are, because it's going to be so wildly different, in that, no Greenskin player in their right mind up until now has run a goblin-only campaign, unless they just wanted to punish themselves. Like, if you're a flagellant and that's how you do it, that's fine. But, like, that's the only reason you would do it, would be to whip yourself. So, definitely really excited for this. I think the debuff is really cool. Not being able to use orcs means you're going to have to develop new strategies, and you're going to have to be really clever. But with having much better heroes, you're going to be able to do some really clever things, in that you're going to have, being an assassin, building up your assassin, building up your goblin or Night Goblin Shaman, which is the hero variant, is going to be extremely easy in comparison to how it has been before. And then, of course, he has one legendary weapon, which is Skarsnik's Prodder, which is a vicious halberd. I find it hilarious that they've designated it as a halberd style. I always found it to be more of a spear, but far be it from me to tell them how to do things. Which is capable of unleashing an area of effect burst of powerful magic missiles. I would love to see what that looks like, because a part of me wants to say, wow, that sounds really good, but it could be total garbage. I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. New Lords. This is probably the best part of the DLC. Right there. Rune Lords. Dwarf and Rune Lords are among the most skilled practitioners of the runic arts. As they lead their armies into battle, they can call upon the power of these runes to invigorate friendly units and hinder their foes. Rune Lords also have access to a new mount at level 6. They may unlock and ride the Anvil of Doom into battle. This unique chariot empowers the Rune Lord's runic abilities and increases his damage resistance. The Rune Lords are fucking... I've been waiting for these since day one. When the game was announced, I was waiting for Rune Lords. And the fact that they were not in the base game broke my heart. So the fact that we finally got them and the Anvil of Doom is finally in the game, I'm so happy about. Now, a quick side note. The Anvil of Doom has undergone quite a makeover. In that in tabletop it's traditionally a larger thing that is heavy enough that the dwarves just sort of like install it onto the battlefield. Like, it usually has this complicated matrix of iron plates built up around it so that it doesn't like completely destroy the land around it, and they put it there, and then he strikes it very carefully, because if you misstrike on an Anvil of Doom you can shatter it. However, it would appear that Rune Lords have gotten quite the buff in Total War Warhammer, in that they are incapable of miscasting, which they actually can in tabletop. And not only that, but the dwarves have figured out to put the anvil on a mobile platform that's carried like the Throne of Power, and he just whacks it while fighting in battle. So the Rune Lords have definitely seen a very notable upgrade. In tabletop, they are purely a thing you hide in the very back of your army that just suck the enemy's magic to death, which I hope they do in this, and also buff your army as best you can. But like, if you get them into combat and tabletop, you fucked up. So I'm glad to see that they've been upgraded to sort of a chariot thing. The lore part of me is like, what is this? This is so weird. But it's fine. I'll deal. I love that you get it at level 6. One complaint that I have about this game traditionally is that some of the mounts that are not necessarily as powerful, like flying mounts for a lot of casters in particular being the biggest no-no for this, is that it takes for fucking ever to get a good mount for most of the characters in the game. because all the mounts come with buffs and debuffs, even the really big monstrous ones. But the game takes on this idea that, oh, well, if you want a wyvern, you've got to get to level, or a chaos dragon, you got to get to level 25 if you're a wizard or whatever bullshit. And I've always kind of hated that because it makes it's such a drag to get those characters up so big, especially when if one lucky assassin gets them, or if you have a goof up and you get caught in a really bad position, your army gets killed, you have to start all over. So having a really unique mount, granted it's a what I'd call a support chariot or a buff chariot, which have been very popular in Total War as of the last 2 DLCs. It's probably not as big of a deal, especially since it increases his damage resistance. So with the Rune Lord, you're not getting a fighting lord. You're getting a support lord who's probably very tanky. That's what I want from him. Like, I want the Anvil of Doom to be a lord that I can put in the middle of my army, and he goes in, and he's fighting alongside my dwarves, but he's an anchor. And his job is just to sit there, soak up damage, and just keep the dwarves fighting as long as possible. If I want a dwarf lord who I'm going to, bring on the table and be like, hey, go kill that random dude over there, I'm going to bring a dwarf lord and spec him in combat. Or, I'm going to bring Ungrim Iron Fist. So, very, very excited for the Rune Lord. I think he's going to go a long way to making the dwarves a much more viable faction in multiplayer as well. Because you're going to have a dwarf lord who's on a mount, so he can't be knocked over, and he can't be just absolutely fucking murdered by some douchebag on a hellsteed. I'm looking at you, Manfred. So the fact that Rune Lords are anti-damage, and they can't be knocked over because they're on a mount, and can provide a really solid core for your army, I think is going to make them very powerful. Especially if they're able to, all the regular runesmiths are actually really good at mitigating magic, and of course they're infamous in multiplayer for actually being a good counter to vampire count armies that rely on spam magic, because if you time their damage resistance well enough, you can just mitigate a spell. So I'm really hoping that the Rune Lords are bringing to the table an option where the dwarves can bring a character that just slaps enemy magic users in the face and is like, no magic for you. Because one thing that would be great is to have a counter for things like Manfred, who can generate a lot of magic. I want a character who can kill a lot of magic. Alright, then the Night Goblin War Boss. Spiteful, conniving, and capricious, the Night Goblin War Bosses can unlock unique skills which enhance the capabilities of goblins, night goblins, and squig units, and imbue their entire army with poison attacks. At level 12, they can be mounted on great cave squigs, providing the War Boss with greater damage resistance, speed, and attack power. I don't feel like I need to say anything, because this unit is just fantastic and very aesthetically pleasing. It sounds very powerful. You're going to be able to build pure goblin and squig armies around it, which I really like, because I like thematic armies. One thing that my Volkmar campaign I'm kind of struggling with right now is trying to figure out the themes I want all of my armies to have. And this definitely appeals to that sense of me. And of course, at level 12, they can mount cave squigs. What more can I say? More squigs. You can have a pure squig army, folks. You can have a pure squig army. You can take a Night Goblin War Boss on a squig, and then you can just take squig hoppers and squig herds and just go crazy. I love that. Absolutely love that. New units. The Crooked Moon. The Squig Herd. They have war beasts. They are war beasts, and they have anti-infantry and vanguard deployment, which is terrifying. Found in the caves deep beneath the World's Edge Mountains, squigs are improbable beasts. Part fungus and part flesh with spheroid bodies and a hopping gait, one might view them from a distance as comical. In close proximity, however, they are anything but. As their beady eyes fasten on a target, they bound forward pell-mell, opening their gaping maws to reveal row upon row of dagger-like teeth. Prodded into battle by their Night Goblin Herders, which... Okay, so they have Night Goblin Herders. I was actually talking to someone earlier tonight who told me the forums were complaining that there were no herders. But this right here literally says they have herders, so I imagine they will. Maybe they just weren't in the clip. We'll have to see. They make a swift and vicious anti-infantry force. I would like them to have herders, but I'm not gonna cry if they don't. I just wanted my squigs. So the Squig Herd is definitely a unit that was missing from the Greenskins. Like the body and the muscles and the heart of the Greenskin army were in the roster, but they were missing their soul, which is just goofy shit, like Squigs. Really, really happy to see Squigs in the game. I think they're going to be a fantastic unit. It's just hilarious. It also sounds like they're actually going to be incredibly dangerous. Right now, we have a lot of war beasts in the game. We have a decent amount of war beasts in the game, but very few of them are actually very dangerous. Like, war beasts right now tend to comprise mainly of crap like warhounds. And more warhounds, and that's like it. So the fact that we're getting something that's actually going to be really deadly, like a Squig Herd, is really fantastic. And the fact that they're vanguarding is going to make these things really freaking scary, in my opinion. You're going to have to really watch out for Squig Herds. I bet they're going to be a very popular option for flanking maneuvers with Greenskins. Night Goblin Squig Herders. Cavalry, anti-infantry, vanguard deployment, poison attacks. It takes a particularly unhinged individual to leap atop a squig and ride it into battle. Fortunately, this is a defining characteristic of Night Goblins. Goaded onward by their squawking, cackling riders, such squigs are driven at breakneck speed, swifter than their unsaddled counterparts, and consequently strike with renewed ferocity. So, pretty much share the same sentiment. More anti-infantry, which I don't know if the Greenskins really need more anti-infantry, but hey, you've got it. I think they have like one anti-large unit in their entire roster. Poison attacks is always a plus. Cavalry with poison attacks is always a big plus. I think these will make more of a... I imagine these are kind of going to be the heavy cav as far as goblins go. You know, you have your spider riders being... primarily support cav with their poison attacks, but they're like pretty crappy other than that. Your wolf riders being the fastest cav in the game, I think, or at least one of the fastest cav in the game. Fastest melee cav, certainly. And being very, very good at like running hit and run tactics. And then you're going to have your squig hoppers being your primarily heavy cav for goblin armies, being a unit with the anti-infantry so that they're able to go in there and slam into combat units and just wreck their day. And with the poison attacks, they also function... They're going to be really pro-flankers, but I think they're actually a cav among the goblins that you can actually throw into the front of a unit and they still do well. They definitely seem like they're going to be a really good... It seems like the squigs and the squig hoppers are going to complement each other very well. If not complement goblins very, because one thing goblins really suck at is anti-infantry. So I think goblins will definitely be helped a lot by these two units having that anti-infantry thing, because goblins right now can kill monsters surprisingly reliably, just because like if you take a lot of goblin archers, you can just mow them down just through like sheer volume of attacks. So these guys will probably go a long way to giving you an answer to things like black orcs, great swords, and stuff like that. Nasty Skulkers. Sneaky Infantry, which is a new classification we haven't seen before. That probably just... I'm not sure what Sneaky Infantry means. Actually, yeah, I do. I know what it means. We'll talk about that in a second. So, Sneaky Infantry, Vanguard deployment. Yet again, all of these units are Vanguarders, so the Greenskins just got a shitload more options for how they play their army. Stalk, which is always terrifying. And Armor Piercing, which is really good on a Stalk unit. Nobody skulks like a goblin, and the nasty skulkers are the very skulkiest. Armed with razor-sharp daggers, they sneak deep into the field before a battle and lie in wait. When the time is right, they leap out and strike, causing lethal armor-piercing damage before scurrying right away under a confounding cloud of smoke. It's all too easy to dismiss the average goblin as a spineless wretch, but when the nasty sculpture springs from nowhere to land on your shoulders, it's enough to challenge your assumptions should you survive the encounter. So... what Sneaky Infantry seems to entail is apparently these guys have a smoke bomb ability. In that, I'm guessing either when they attack or when they pull out of a fight, they can release a cloud of smoke that will probably do something to... I'm not sure. I'm guessing it'll either be morale damage, it might be line of sight. We've got a couple of... The Night Goblins actually have a line of sight spell in their roster, but nobody ever uses it because... it's just kind of a very niche thing. But I think with a lot of these sneakier units and a lot of Vanguard, that spell is going to become a lot more powerful because you're actually going to have armies that really benefit from the idea of limiting your enemy's line of sight. and causing them to really struggle to locate some of your units. The other thing it could mean is that from the way it says that it's all too easy to dismiss the average goblin as a spineless wretch, I'm wondering if that means that the nasty skulkers might appear as regular goblins until you get close enough, but that would not make sense because then that would counter with stock, which means you can't see them at all. So sneaky infantry almost certainly seems to mean that either it has something to do with the smoke bombs. I don't know what the smoke bombs do, but it seems to be completely very heavily related to this sneaky infantry. Alright, and that's it for the Greenskins. They got 3 new units, which is fine. Clan Angren gets also 3 new units, primarily. You get the Rangers, which are upgradable with great weapons, and they're range melee, fast, vanguard deployment, and can stock. I'm wondering if that means only one version of them stocks, or if you have to get... What is it, can stock? Okay, that has to mean that only one version of them has it, or that it's an upgrade that you have to get. But I've never seen a unit in the game that has to get... There's never been a unit in Total War Warhammer where you have to upgrade them to unlock an ability they have yet. That just doesn't exist in the game, at least not off the top of my head. So I don't think that's what that means. I think it means that probably the base version has stock, but the Great Weapon version does not. Alright, the long-range eyes and ears of a dwarf throng. Rangers are accustomed to operating alone, often deep in enemy territory. Expert crossbowmen, they make superb ambushers, waiting patiently for the enemy to maneuver into their firing lines before letting fly with a cloud of thudding bolts. Should the enemy draw near, they are well-drilled melee combatants too, especially when armed with great weapons. So, these guys I think are extremely straightforward. You're going to have the base version, which are primarily going to be ranged ambushers with the Vanguard and Stock, which I think is probably going to be one of the most disgusting, well-needed additions to any army in the game. Right now, the Dwarves tend to really suffer against like cav-heavy armies because they don't have a way to, especially fast cav. Like, really heavy cavalry tend not to be as big of a deal for the dwarves because once they commit to melee, like, they're stuck, and the dwarves can usually cut them down. Or they're so slow that, like, when they're charging in, thunderers or cannons or something can get off a couple volleys. Like, demigryphs, I actually don't consider to be a very good counter to dwarves because cannons will one-shot them and really hurt their ranks. Organ guns also do a ton of damage to them. And if slayers get on them, slayers will just tear them apart. Also, they will typically lose to hammers if the hammers get a good engagement. But things like pistoliers, outriders, wolf riders, spider riders, a lot of those warhounds, a lot of those really fast units in the game can be agonizing to fight as a dwarf player because either you won't see them coming until they're among your war machines and then they just mess you up because they came from a direction you weren't anticipating, and right now the only dwarf unit that's deployable with Vanguard are miners. These guys are going to offer an alternative, a really sexy alternative, which is that the Rangers having crossbows are probably going to have the same range. I would assume, I'll have to double check it, but they're probably going to have the same range, if not very similar range to the Quarrelers, and if they have that long a range, they're going to be amazing. Because with stock, their range is so long, they can actually shoot people and still be out of sight, because that happens a lot with Night Goblin Archers, and Night Goblin Archers have a shit-tastic range compared to Dwarf Quarrelers. So if they're actually long enough range where they're able to constantly harass without being seen, that's going to be a nightmare for most people to deal with. Is also going to provide the dwarves with a really powerful counterattack to dealing with a lot of those cav-heavy armies. It also allows the dwarves to make a completely brand new strategy, which is to build a vanguard army. So with the dwarves, right now, the dwarves suffer from a problem in that the only viable strategy is to deploy in a box. Because if you try and do a more, or not necessarily a box, but like all together. Because if you try and separate your dwarf army at all, it's a waste of time because miners are so slow and they can't hide that they just get the shit kicked out of them. But these change the name of the game. Now, when you fight a dwarf army, you might see like a unit of miners with blasting charges, for instance, and think, oh, easy kill, I'll send my cav over there to get them. Send your cav over, and next thing you know, there are 4 units of rangers, 2 with Quarrelers, maybe 2 with great weapons that are hiding or something. and all of a sudden you're horribly outnumbered on that flank, and they just tear apart your cav, while the main dwarf army just keeps shooting you and advancing, and then you get caught in a bear trap. So I think this is really going to help the dwarven tacticians, and the people who really love dwarves and want to play them but are really sick of taking like a pure hammer army with Thorgrim, you know, and like 2 runesmiths. I think this is going to really open up the realm of possibilities, in that you're actually going to have dwarf armies that are viably different. Like, I definitely want to build an army that works on an ambush mechanic of like trying to lure people out with an easy minor unit, and then be like, oh yeah, I can totally handle it with my Wolf Riders or whatever, and they send them over and I just murder them and then come in on their flank, and they're forced to go defensive, which will provide my war machines with longer time to harass. So I'm really excited to put that into use. Or alternatively, what you could do is you can leave your war machines kind of undefended, or at least it appears they're undefended. You know, you have like a line of 3 war machines that are very long range, you know, cannons and stuff. Start opening fire while the rest of your army advances. And then when the enemy inevitably sends a unit around or sneaks through to get on your war machines, you launch the assault with the rangers who are sitting like right on top of them or right behind them or something, and they just go out and destroy the enemy units because the enemy wasn't anticipating 2 or 3 units to be there to counter him. The great weapon variant looked fantastic. Dwarves always need more armor piercing, in my opinion. Armor piercing melee, you always need more stuff to just chop up cav with. Like, that's how I always feel with dwarves. I don't feel like horde armies are really a threat to dwarves, just because if you get some good shield infantry in there, they're just going to last for a billion years. Cav tend to be the real damning of dwarves. So these great weapon dwarves are fantastic, and the fact that they have throwing axes, which are a shorter range but pretty nasty looking weapon, are going to be really awesome, because that means that they're a precursor weapon, which, if you're not familiar with the terminology, is something that Total War invented, I think, in Rome? I don't remember what game it was invented in. I know in Rome 2 it was talked about a lot, but precursors are basically considered missile weapons that you're supposed to use to, like, get an initial prick on the enemy while they're charging at you, and then you charge and complete the charge, or like you see an enemy charging and you throw weapons while they're finishing the connection. So I think one thing that we're going to see that's going to be really good with these great weapon units is especially if you combo them with the crossbow unit, you have the crossbow unit harass from range, and then when the enemy gets close, you make sure your great weapons are there to receive the charge and have them just start throwing axes to just tear people apart. But this unit, I think, is going to be fucking crucial to dwarf gameplay, and it's going to just change how dwarves fight. You know, now when I think people fight a dwarf player on multiplayer, it's no longer going to be the simple answer of, oh, they're playing dwarves, so I'm just going to take nothing but, I'm going to take nothing but cav. I'm going to take, you're not going to, I don't think you're going to face that vampire count player anymore who's going to be like, oh, I'll take, my Hellsteed, Manfred, and then I'm just going to take a shitload of Black Knights. And for that to be as efficient of a strategy, because I think the dwarves now have a lot of options to play very tactically, and rangers are going to allow you to surround your opponents, because, like, one thing I like to do with quarrelers is I want my quarrelers to get behind the enemy so that they can shoot into their rears and their flanks and just tear them up. Right now that's very, very hard to do because quarrelers cannot hide and they're slow as fuck because they're dwarves. These guys instantly solve that problem. Deploy them on the flanks. Deploy them outside your army on the flanks, but within range. Wait for the enemy to come in who can't even see them, and then you just fucking murder stomp them. Alright, Bugman's Rangers. Ranged melee. Also, they're fast, which means they're probably a tiny bit slower than Slayers, but that means they're actually going to be able to outrun most infantry units. But they're probably going to be able to, not most, but they're probably going to be fast enough to catch them, which means they're going to be really good for harassing and keeping fleeing units away from you. Also, cavalry will have a harder time disengaging. Bugman's Rangers. Range melee, fast vanguard deployment, can stock. See, we've got that can stock again on Bugman's Rangers, which don't have a variant. So I don't know what it means. Maybe there is a research thing for it, but I'm pretty sure I've checked the research. Okay, well, let's not skip ahead. We'll come back to that. Eternal vengeance seekers for the destruction of their master's fabled brewery. These veteran warriors often arrive unannounced before a battle to bear grim tidings before joining the throng for the fight ahead. They are peerless rangers in their own right, though the unit never travels without the fortifying power of Bugman's most potent brews. Such liquid fortification can transform their fighting abilities. These guys are probably basically going to be your equivalent of the Knights of the Blazing Sun for the dwarves. They're going to be your super unit that you can take in mass. they're probably going to be the best unit in the Dwarf roster, if I'm honest. The fact that they have a ranged melee mix, they're fast, can vanguard, can stalk, and they apparently have an additional buff from the liquid fortification of Bugman's Brew, which I don't know what that's going to do. In tabletop, typically when Bugman gives a unit his brew, like his rangers, you roll a die, and depending on what you roll, you get a different buff. It could be anything from like +1 attack to regeneration to unbreakable to stuff like that. So what this can do, I think, is going to really make or break how good they are. Like right now, the Knights of the Blazing Sun are like one of the best units in the Empire roster, in my opinion, and they're really fun to use. I think Bugman's Rangers are going to very much fit that niche. I have a strong feeling, though, they probably won't be super popular in multiplayer, unless this turns out to be amazing, because I bet they're going to be really expensive. I bet the core Rangers are going to be a much more popular option. And then the Bolt Thrower, Field Artillery, Armor Piercing. Tried and true, many clans still employ the Bolt Thrower, war machine the dwarves have used since the days of the Ancestor Gods. Essentially oversized crossbows, they are accurate and reliable, hurling massive, razor-sharp bolts capable of piercing even the toughest armor. These things, I think, are going to be fucking amazing for the dwarves. Right, and they're also anti-large, which is not included on here for some reason. Right now, the dwarves, like I've already said a billion times, struggle the most against Cav. This seems like a very good answer to Cav. They shoot 4 shots each, I think. I think it's 4 bolt throwers. Is it 3? It might be 3. But you get your bolt throwers. They probably have a very low reload rate since they're not guns. Their reload rate is probably less than that of the cannon by a long shot. Maybe even less than the Thunderers, I'm not sure. But they're going to have a low reload rate, they're going to be accurate, and they're going to hit hard. The fact that they are armor-piercing and anti-large is just fantastic. They're probably going to be the best war machine in the game for harassing flyers. Right now, cannons are too slow, and the reload rate is way too slow to affect flyers very much. Because even if a cannon can connect, if you're lucky, it'll roll high for its damage and do like maybe 10% of their health. I feel like these are going to be much better and probably very cheap. They're probably going to be the cheapest war machine or the second cheapest. I think Grudge Throwers will be the cheapest, followed by Bolt Thrower, then Cannon, then Organ Gun, then Flame Cannon. So, A, glad to see the Dwarf roster is finished. At least until we get Shield Bearers. B, these things I think are going to be a really good answer, or just another great alternative for the dwarves to take it to the enemy, you know. Also, I find it from a lore perspective that I can actually run like an old school dwarf army, like a dwarf, one of the dwarf clans that hates those newfangled inventions. With the bolt thrower, now you can run like grudge thrower, bolt thrower, crossbows, squirrelers, ranger. Like you can run a full army that's really tactically good, but doesn't use any of the like updated black powder weapons, which I think is pretty cool. Now let's talk about this, which I think is amazing, and I really wish the Volkmar DLC had something exciting like this. New unique building chains, which are always great. The settlement of Carrick 8 Peaks offers a unique Carrick 8 Peaks building chain, the benefits of which differ depending on which is captured by Clan Angrind or the Crooked Boon tribe. If you've built by Clan Angrind, the benefits are as follows. Level 1 focuses on making Carrick 8 Peaks more defensible, giving unit stat bonuses when under siege. Pretty awesome. Level 1's probably going to be unlocked. I wonder what level these are unlocked at. I'm thinking they would be unlocked at tier 2. Like, probably go through from tier 2 to 3. They'll probably go from tier 2 to tier 4, but they might go from tier 3 to tier 5. But that being said, I'd be surprised if you couldn't unlock them early. So level 1 gives you unit stat bonuses when under siege, which is great because that's a place where you're going to fight a lot. Getting to 8 peaks is probably going to be a nightmare, and once you have 8 peaks, there's a lot of people to deal with. Level 2 focuses on rebuilding the Karak, giving large public order bonuses, unit experience for various units, and reductions in corruption. Reductions in corruption is like music to my ear, and is always something that's awesome to have. It's not really as important in the Badlands. With the Beastmen in the game, you'd think it would be, but I think the Beastmen AI needs a buff because right now it tends to be really stupid and get wiped out really fast. if the beastmen were actually good at their job, then the corruption would be really high in the Badlands because of them and could be potentially dangerous, but they're not, so what are you going to do? Unit experience for various units. I'm hoping that means... I'm wondering if that means that it's going to improve the experience of units recruited there, or if it's going to just be like the Dwarf Thanes and it's going to give you a unit experience buff just for hanging out there. And large public order, always worth it. I will always take public order bonuses, especially since the Karak probably won't be your capital. You're probably going to struggle to establish really good public order, especially if you're... It depends on how Belegar's campaign works. I mean, if you have to mad rush to the 8 peaks, which most people probably will, you might have a lot of grudges, which are going to need that public order bonus. And I'm also wondering if that's only for the 8 peaks region, or if that's for like a more global thing. It's probably just the region. Level 3 marks the recovery of the Ancestor Tombs and supplies Ancestor weapons for military units in nearby provinces, imbuing them with magical attacks. Level 3 also ramps up unit experience and public order bonuses. This is fucking amazing. Giving magical attacks to all nearby dwarves is so cool. I love that. Like, it's not a huge deal because... well, actually, magical attacks are pretty sexy because most units have shitty magic resistance, and if you don't have good magic resistance, then magic damage is very badly mitigated, and so you actually do a ton of damage. Also, it means that the vampire counts can't shit on your day with a lot of ethereal units. Very, very excited for this. The unit experience and public order bonuses, that definitely seems like it's much more of a global thing to match up with Skarsnik's. But I don't know, we'll have to see. If there's one thing I don't like about when CA announces stuff is that they like to be really vague. They're like, oh yeah, like it gives you public order bonus. I kind of wish they would just give you the stats and be like, yeah, it does this specifically. But that's not really their thing. You know, that's what I like about games like League of Legends or Vermintide and, you know, stuff like that. Where like you can like, when you look at the patch notes, they're like, here are the details of exactly what, you know, these things do. For those of you who want. Like, I feel like the vague section is fine, but like at the very bottom should be all the stats. But, oh well. Okay, so that's super exciting and definitely makes 8 peaks worth the trial of getting there. Not to mention it makes your army way cheaper to maintain. Fucking love it. Fucking love it. The Crooked Moon Tribe. If built by the Crooked Moon Tribe, the benefits are as follows. Level 1 focuses on making Karak 8 peaks unassailable, as the tribe expects Clan Angren to attempt to retake it. This confers a massive siege holdout time bonus and 0 attrition suffered during sieges. That is huge. This is so huge, it's not even funny. This means that if the Night Goblins get in there, if he gets a 20 stack into that building, you are going to have to kill them to get them out. Well, you don't have to kill them, but they have a very, very good chance of beating you back. Because the problem is, because they suffer no attrition and they have this massive siege holdout time, if they've got like a 20-turn siege, they're not going to take any damage during that. So you're just going to have to sit there and wait to keep them trapped there. But he's not going to come outside. That would be stupid. Like, he's not going to come out unless he gets like another 20 stack down to fight you, which he has plenty of time to do. And, you know, also, if he has good research to build up his fightiness, he could very easily unleash a Waaagh during that time. And any greenskin that unleashes a Waaagh that you're sieging is not a good time for you. And that's level 1. Level 2 confers obedience bonuses to the region and enhances unit experience for goblins. Awesome. Obedience bonus is the thing that greenskins suffer with the most. Keeping good obedience in a greenskin campaign is a fucking pain in the ass, especially if you're playing on very hard or legendary. Enhances unit experience for goblins, can't complain. Level 9 goblins are actually deceptively good in this game. There are people who I have seen lose games in multiplayer because they have underestimated level 9 goblin units. So better goblins, always good. Especially if you're running Goblin General, this will actually probably make the goblins in your army legitimately scary. Level 3 gives starting level bonus experience to heroes, which combos really nicely with Skarsnik's campaign bonus. Global experience gains for all units, and reduces dwarf morale in the surrounding regions. This is a very niche ability, but it's going to be extremely good for if the dwarves gain an early advantage, or if the dwarves start coming towards you. So, like, as far as global campaign is concerned, I think the dwarves get the better bonuses, but as far as house campaigns tend to typically play out, I think the greenskins have a really good one too. That being said, I'm hoping Clan Angrund has a shorter journey to get to Carrick 8 Peaks, so I'm hoping that it's very I'm hoping it's very aggressive if you're playing Skarsnik, because one thing that I find kind of meh is that, like, right now, most of the campaigns I play in, the dwarves tend to get stomped. I would say 75% of the time. I'd say 25% of the time the dwarves, like, become really powerful. But if you just sort of leave them to do what they want, the AI tends to favor the greenskins in my experience. I'm not sure why that is. It just tends to be the case. That being said, these new units could totally mix things up. I don't know. We'll have to see how the AI plays. But both of these are very exciting. Having a unique building for your faction that has like a unique trait, I think is really awesome. I think this would have been the equivalent to, like, if you took Volkmar for the Empire and you built the Grand Cathedral of Sigmar. It was actually, like, different if you built an Altdorf. It was like a unique building. Or if you took Gorst, you could build like a zombie fields or some, I don't know what the fuck you'd do for Gorst, but something like that for Gorst in Castle Drakenhof, which would have, like, provided cool buffs. Alright, new dwarf building chain. The Ranger Outpost, which starts at Tier 1, upgrades to some unnamed building, and then it Tier 2, and then upgrades to another building, which is the Ranger Barracks at Tier 3. Actually, wait. I think that's what it's saying. I'm not sure. It seems to be indicating that. It might just be that you get the Ranger Outpost at Tier 1, and then it can upgrade to a Ranger Barracks at Tier 3, but that seems silly. I imagine it goes Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 with... Oh, you know what? No, I think it's the Ranger Outpost at Tier 1, and then the Ranger Barracks are at Tier 3. I don't think there's a Tier 2 building, because it says the Ranger chain initially provides the recruitment of crossbow-wielding Rangers, and later... and the Elite Bugman's Rangers. So I think what's going to happen here is that at Tier 1, you only get the crossbow-wielding Rangers, and then once you hit Tier 3, you're able to unlock both Great Weapon and Bugman's. That's okay, I guess. I kind of wish it was Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, and you got regular Rangers, Rangers with Great Weapons, and then Elite Bugman's Rangers, but that doesn't seem to be the case. That being said, I'm always a fan of new building chains. Great, awesome. Because the dwarf building chains, in my opinion, feel really cramped right now, in that, like, if you buy the regular dwarf barracks, you get, like, fucking everything. So I'm glad they're kind of separating it out a little bit. New dwarf techs. Vanguard proficiency. Improves melee defense and speed for rangers units. That's awesome. Probably very, very early, but awesome. Can't complain. Rat poison, which is the best name for any fucking technology in this entire game. Reduces faction-wide corruption, improves income from mines and quarries, and keeps fabled man-sized rats at bay. The fact that they have a Skaven drop for the Carrick 8 Peaks DLC is fucking awesome. It's so appropriate, because the Skaven are like the third major faction in Carrick 8 Peaks. I love it. Absolutely love it. Definitely probably a later tier top tree. If you play the dwarves, you'll note that their trees are separated in the top trees, which there's kind of two for each side, but the top trees tend to be for your empire, and the bottom trees tend to be for battles. So this will definitely be probably very late in the top tree, because this is stupidly good. Faction-wide corruption and income, can't complain there. I mean, that's amazing. New greenskin buildings. Squig cages, which you get at Tier 3. The new squig cages building enables the recruitment of squig herds and night goblin squig hoppers once you get this tech. So if you have the squig herd, if you build the squig cages, you immediately get access to the squig herd, which I like. However, you have to unlock the recruitment of the night goblin squig hoppers in order to get your hands on the squig. You have to unlock squig riding to get access to squig hoppers. I don't know if squig hoppers are going to be good enough to make it so that you have to get a technology to unlock them. I like the idea. I'm curious where they're going to put it on the tree, because right now it's you go along the basic tree, and then it splits into the Arachnarok side, the Doomdiver side, and then there's a neutral tree. So I'm wondering if the neutral tree is going to be where they put the Squig Hoppers, or if they're going to put them in like a Goblin tree. We'll have to see. That being said, I like it. Regiments of Renown. These are elite units, legendary within the annals of the old world, whose statistics are much improved over those of their standard counterparts. They can be unlocked for recruitment when the lord under your command has attained the sufficient skill level, and are instantly recruited from the special Regiments of Renown recruitment menu into his army. In this respect, they differ from standard units, which spend at least one turn in the recruitment queue. Alongside enhanced stats and top-tier level 9 veterancy, each Regiment of Renown also has one or more special abilities, and its standard roster counterpart does not. Pretty standard. If you've played at all since the Volkmar release, you know what that is. So let's get started with the Dwarves, who have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so the Dwarves have 10 Regiments of Renown, the Greenskins have 12, which makes sense because the Greenskins have a larger roster. Dwarves, Ulthuar's Rangers with great weapons, decreases enemy missile deflection and resistance. This is kind of interesting on these guys because they're the great weapon variant. You figure deflection and resistance to enemy missiles would be better to put on the Quarreler unit, but the throwing axes seem like they're pretty powerful. So definitely a great unit. I would have preferred it, I think, on the Crossbow Rangers, but it seems pretty good. Definitely not the strongest, though. Peak Gate Guard. Magic attacks, immune to psychology, and sunder armor, which is something we're going to see a lot in this section. We'll talk about what that means, which are hammers. Hammers having magical attacks is always a plus in my book. I can't wait to see what they look like in game. Immune to psychology is great. It's not super amazing in this game, but it's pretty good. And sunder armor, which you'll see a lot. From what I've understood from looking around and doing what research I could, seems to mean that it lowers the enemy's armor on top of any other abilities you have. So for instance, for hammers, this actually makes hammers terrifying because they already have armor piercing with their great weapons. So if you have an armor piercing great weapon, and you have sunder armor, and you're running a runesmith or a rune lord who has forge fire to give you more armor piercing, these guys are going to fucking melt your face. So, especially with magic attacks, meaning that if you don't have magic resistance, that's more damage. These guys are basically, between these two abilities, they're melting through anything that's not high melee defense. If you have low melee defense, these guys will probably beat your ass into the ground. The Goblobber uses Screaming Goblin ammo, which we saw the screenshot for earlier. It has enhanced morale, which is really bizarre on a war machine, but okay. But it reduces target morale on impact. That is fucking amazing. If you play a lot, especially in competitive multiplayer, reducing target morale and breaking units early is really crucial to having a good battle. The fact that the Goblobber can actually reduce target morale with catapult shots, which have a pretty good AoE impact area, is huge. Because if you combo that with targeted fire from your ranged units, you can guaranteed break a unit so easily. Because a lot of units in the game, as it is right now, can be broken pretty fast if they take concentrated siege fire and ranged units. But with this, you actually have the possibility of breaking units with just the Goblobber. It's basically a discount Screaming Skull Catapult from the Tomb Kings, just the dwarves have it, which is pretty funny. The Skyhammer, which is the gyro bomber, multiple bombs per drop. Of course, this is one of those situations where I'm kind of annoyed at CA saying multiple instead of just specifically saying how many. If it drops 2 bombs per drop, that's pretty good. Worth taking. I think gyro bombers are an exceptionally good unit, though I think they tend to pale in comparison to the gyrocopters. Now, if it's dropping 3 bombs per drop, now we're talking about something that's pretty terrifying. If it drops 3 bombs per drop, you can absolutely just obliterate a firing line. Because the gyro bomber bombs are already pretty deadly as it is. But if you're getting 3 per drop, they're going to absolutely wreck a battle line. Like, you could take out an entire unit with a single drop. Or at least reduce them by a horrible number. Ekran Miners, miners with blasting charges. They have Frenzy and increased blasting charge ammo. Frenzy on miners is an interesting concept. Miners tend to be kind of glass cannony in my experience with them. That being said, I think the Ekran Miners, if they are cheap, I think they will be a must-have. The Frenzy is going to make them immune to psychology and also gives them a pretty spectacular bonus to their melee attack, which is going to make them super awesome at cutting into people's flanks. And the increased blasting charge ammo is always... Blasting charges are always phenomenal. There's no reason not to have blasting charges. So to give me more blasting charges is fantastic. The Warriors of Dragonfire Pass. Anti-infantry flaming attacks. I feel like I don't need to really spend too much time discussing this. The ultimate weakness of Dwarf Warriors is that they tend to turn into a grindfest. Giving Dwarf Warriors anti-infantry is a really good way to give them the upper hand in that grindfest. Especially, I'm really glad that this is on regular Dwarf Infantry and not Great Weapon Dwarf Infantry, because I feel like the Great Weapon Dwarf Warriors are terrible. I feel like they're really not worth taking most of the time. I prefer shield. Like, if I want great weapons, I'm going to bring, like, hammers or longbeards with great weapons. I'm not going to waste my time on Dwarf Warriors with great weapons. Or miners, even. So, I feel like this unit is going to be really solid. Of course, having flaming attacks is going to make them excellent for dealing with units that have regen. This unit, I think, will excel the most when you're fighting vampire counts who tend to run really regen-heavy armies. The Scolder Guard, Iron Drakes, armor-piercing projectiles, and physical resistance. That's a fucking fantastic unit. Physical resistance is the best kind of the compared to it, so it's basically increases your armor, your ranged resistance, and your melee defense. That's essentially what it does, because by raising your physical resistance, so long as it is not a magical attack or explosive damage, it's going to reduce all forms of damage. So that is a fantastic bonus on a unit that tends to get melted a little too easily for my liking. And the fact that they have armor-piercing projectiles, thank you God. One of the things I actually disliked about Total War Warhammer is that they changed the Iron Drakes from being a really hardcore armor-piercing elite unit to more of an anti-horde unit, and that's not what they were in Tabletop. In Tabletop, they were a unit that fired a single bolt per guy, but the bolts would absolutely destroy whatever they ran into. You know, trolls, dead. Dragons, hurt very badly. Like, they were actually terrible against hordes because they fired one shot each. They were very, very good against cav. So armor-piercing projectiles, I think, is going to go a long way to making this unit worth taking, because the Iron Drakes do a lot of damage, and they have a lot of AoE damage. Like, I don't know if you've used them, if you're listening to this, but if you use them, they actually will hit a shitload of people. It just, right now, the problem with it is that armor mitigates the shit out of it. So the fact that it's armor-piercing is going to really fix that. Norgrimling's Ironbreakers. Vanguard deployment, immune to psychology, and increased unit size. These two right here, Vanguard deployment and increased unit size, are two things that should have never come anywhere near an Ironbreaker unit. Ironbreakers are already, in my opinion, the best defensive unit in the game, as they rightfully should be. And the fact that they can Vanguard, which is totally unnecessary, but also have increased unit size, makes this unit fucking terrifying. Like, if you want to take a really trolly build for multiplayer, I would highly recommend taking Norgrimling's Ironbreakers and forming like a Ranger Miner battle line around them, and they would just be horrifying to deal with. That increased unit size, this unit's going to be a must-have. This is going to be a must-have unit in your best army. The Dragonback Slayers. Charge defense, physical resistance, fire resistance, reduces target's speed, increases target's flammability. Need I say any more? The only thing they're missing are flaming attacks. But honestly, if you're going to increase target flammability, this is a unit you're probably going to want to combo. This is a unit I would not just take in any army. This is a unit I would take in armies that focus around flaming damage, like flame cannons, Iron Drakes, Ironhammer torpedoes. If you can actually take advantage of this flammability, you're going to be able to just melt people with Iron Drakes. But reducing target speed is fantastic. Dwarf Slayers are already pretty fast, but a lot of the problem is if you go up against Cav, they'll just outrun you. I don't mean if a Slayer unit starts chasing the Cav unit, the Cav unit runs away. Yes, the Cav unit should be able to get away. I mean if the Cav unit is fighting my army and is in the thick of melee, the Slayers come in and start attacking them, they shouldn't be able to break away and run away. They should be very difficult to do that. This is going to go a long way to help that. Charge defense on Slayers is always extremely welcome. Physical resistance, extremely welcome. Fire resistance, kind of weird, but extremely welcome. Actually, the fire resistance is really good because that means you can fire the Iron Drakes kind of with impunity. You know, if you hit your own dwarves, it's not as big of a deal. The Old Grumblers, Longbeards with great weapons. AoE ally fatigue augment. Dwarves will never break if you can keep them from getting fatigued. If you can keep them from getting fatigued and you prevent a rear charge, you will not break under any circumstances. Unless you, like, just die. So, all in all, I would say the dwarves, 10 units? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, the dwarves 10 units are fantastic. Very, very good. A couple of them are very imaginative. There we go. Gosh. I would say the MVPs are going to be the Skolder Guard. Norgrimlin's Ironbreakers are definitely first place. Skolder Guard I would put in second place, and I would put the Goblobber in third place. Greenskins have 12. We're almost there. So first we got the Rusty Errors, which are Night Goblin Archers. They have Armor Sundering ranged attacks and poisoned melee attacks. Very good unit, considering that they have Stalk because they're Night Goblins and Vanguard. You're going to be able to get them up nice and close. These guys are going to be the kings of flank battles. Armor Sundering ranged attacks is disgusting on a unit that's as fucking big as Night Goblin Archers are, which, by the way, Night Goblins already have poison ranged attacks, so it's not like you're only getting poison melee. You are also getting poison ranged attacks. So Night Goblin Archers are already terrifying. At least I'm pretty sure they have poison ranged attacks. And then poison melee attacks just means that they're going to be much better. It's not going to protect them from your average unit. It will protect them from kind of shitty units like Warhounds, maybe Marauders, maybe Miners. Like some of those really like crap units that you normally use on archers to get them to stop shooting and just sort of tear them up might not actually work against these guys. The Moon Howlers, Goblin Wolf Riders with Fear. This unit is super good. It may not seem like it, but they are actually super good. That Fear goes a long way in a Greenskin army because Greenskins actually, funny enough, do not have that many Fear Causers. If you want to have Fear Causers in your Greenskin army, you have to bring a monster or you have to bring a unit of Trolls, which I think Trolls are going to see a return in the average Greenskin roster. I would be surprised if Skarsnik or the Night Goblin War Bosses don't have some stuff that makes Trolls maybe a little more reliable. But if you don't like Trolls, then these guys will do good. And with Fear, you can get them to where you need them to be for that morale debuff. The Death Creepers, which are actually a special character unit. They are led by Snagla Grobspit in the tabletop, and he's actually a special character you can take. This is his unit. The Death Creepers, Goblin Spider Riders with Regeneration and Stalk. This is a fantastic unit for regeneration. Most of the units I actually complain about having regeneration, or like Trolls, are because Trolls will go in, get the shit kicked out of them, and then they run away, but usually they take so much damage and their morale is so bad that them having regen isn't good enough. Like, it just doesn't work. You know, even units like Crypt Horrors, the regen's a little iffy because they have a really hard time pulling away from combat. Death Creepers, on the other hand, or Goblin Spider Riders, are excellent at running away from combat. They are basically the perfect unit to sneak up, come in for a rear charge for that morale debuff, do a little damage, take a little damage, run away, let them regen for a minute, come back in. You know, and just constantly do those hit and runs. This is going to be a masterful hit and run unit. They'll combo really nicely with the Moon Howlers. Having Stalk is always nice because who does not like Goblin Spider Riders that you can't see until they're too close? Doesn't that sound just awesome? Also, if they're based on the artwork of the Death Creepers from the End Times book Thankful, they're going to look amazing. I hope that's the version they're based off. The Thief Robbers, a Goblin Wolf Chariot that has Vanguard deployment and can hide in forests. I don't understand how a chariot can hide in forests, especially if these guys are at all related to any of the tribes that have teeth in their name, which tend to be badlands and or mountainous. But they have it. I don't think this, and they have Vanguard, which is of course amazing on a chariot. I don't think this unit is going to be like the most amazing thing in the universe, but it does provide for some really interesting tactics. Chariots are phenomenal if you can get them into the enemy rear or flank, as they can just pass through the enemy, do a lot of damage, and just keep going. Goblin Wolf Chariots in particular, is when it comes to the AI at least, they tend to be the best chariot in the game because they have an excellent ranged attack and are very good at harassing. This unit is just going to be better at it, and it actually has the ability to sneak up on you. One of the things that chariots suffer from in tabletop, or not tabletop, in Total War is that they're very painfully obvious and cannot hide, and so you're able to constantly worry about them and counter them if you need to. Thief Robbers, you don't get that luxury. Morgrub's Mangy Marauders. Goblin Wolf Archers that are immune to psychology, which is really good on them, especially when dealing with the vampire counts. And they have armor-piercing projectiles. They did not need that. This is way too good on Goblin Wolf Archers. Goblin Wolf Archers are already the bane of my existence. Against Dwarf players, this is a fucking nightmare. Armor-piercing projectiles on ranged units, or well, that's kind of redundant, isn't it? Armor-piercing projectiles from a fast unit is terrifying. These guys can run up to your very heavily armored infantry troops or your cav, start shooting away to do a ton of damage, and they will get away from you. Guaranteed. The only units capable of catching these guys are crap like Pistoliers or War Machines. But if they want to harass you, they're going to harass you, and it's going to be miserable. The Hammer of Gork. This one is really weird. If it hits you, I believe is what it's trying to say, it debuffs your missile accuracy, your melee attack, your melee defense, and it does poison damage, which further debuffs your speed and I think your melee attack and melee defense. This here is what's weird about it. Basically, the Hammer of Gork is just a debuff machine. Whoever it hits, you're gonna get debuffed. In every single way that matters. Having melee defense and melee attack and poisoned attacks means that this thing is just gonna shit on whoever it hits. Like, if your unit of greatswords is going up against a unit of, like, orc biggins, and this thing whacks your greatswords are probably going to lose. But the missile accuracy is really interesting because what it means is that the Hammer of Gork is actually exceptional at just ruining, like, it can counter any unit in the game. No matter what you bring to fight it, it can point itself at that thing, and if it scores a hit on you, you're gonna have a hard time retaliating. You know, whether it's, and it's, what I like about it is that it works in every phase of the game. So, like, at the beginning of the battle, you use it to primarily target the enemy war machines. If you're hitting the enemy war machines, you're reducing their missile accuracy and doing damage, which means the retaliatory shots are going to be less accurate, which means they're going to do less damage. And a lot of war machines are already frustratingly inaccurate as it is. So this is going to be really good for pissing off players like me who really like war machines. Then, when you move on to the middle phase of the game, when it's primarily ranged units engaging with each other before the melee lines meet, once again, really, really good. Because those poison attacks mean that he's going to do a lot of damage because of his AoE and the fact that he's just a rock lobber. B, the poison attacks hurts. C, you're going to get less accurate. You know, what more do you want? You know, you got your unit of handgunners in the perfect position. Haha, fuck you, never mind. And, of course, the melee defense and melee attack, the fact that a AoE missile attack, which stone throwers are not that inaccurate, he's going to be able to pummel your elite units. He's just going to pick whatever the best army in your best unit in your army is, and he's just going to flatten it with a rock. And then his goblins, which is primarily what this is going to be used in accordance with, or black orcs, God forbid, are going to tear you apart. Excellent, excellent model. Durkit's Squigs, Night Goblin Squig Hoppers that have missile resistance. Easily the most underwhelming unit on this list. You have Cav with missile resistance. It's not bad, it's not exciting. If it's like really high missile resistance, I guess that's cool, because these guys will be very good for taking out ranged units, because the only thing that handgunners have to defend them usually is the volley they get off before they inevitably take the charge. This kind of provides a problem. The 8 Peak Loonies, Night Goblin Fanatics. The unit is unbreakable, and their fanatics have Dwarf on a Chain, which I think is just a cosmetic funny thing. So kind of like the Goblobber, which the dwarves have, shoots night goblins. This is what they do to the dwarves. They attach them to balls and chain and bludgeon them to death using fanatics. If fanatics have not been buffed, this unit, I don't care. This unit sucks. Unbreakable goblins would be good if it weren't night goblin fanatics or nigh goblin fanatics. If it was like an unbreakable unit of goblins, like regular night goblins, I would be excited. Night goblin fanatics, I'm not as excited. If the damage has been buffed, then fuck yeah, count me in. But right now, fanatics are a very gimmicky unit. Like, they're super gimmick, they do no damage, they don't interrupt enemies very well, and they also have random directions, which would be good if they were actually good. So right now, I'm not excited about this. I hope it's been fixed. I hope it's been fixed. The Broken Tusk Mob. Orc Boarboy Biggins who are armored and having courage. That is really fucking good. That is very, very good. That's a unit that is going to just crap on your day. Having encourage means they're going to be excellent at coming in on the flank and providing a bolster to your army, where typically your general isn't close enough to help out. And the fact that they're armored, I already hate Orc Boy Biggins because they're anti-large and they just hit really, really fucking hard. And the fact that these guys are armored means they're going to be very tough to take down. The Crimson Killers. Anti-infantry, dual-wielding great weapons, AoE attacks. What the fuck, CA? What the fuck is this? What the fuck is this? This bonus to Black Orcs. Wow, that's really good. That makes Black Orcs kind of good, or better, which is ridiculous because they're already really fucking good for their price. What's that? They have AoE attacks? Fuck, that unit's fucking amazing. Probably the best unit in the game. Oh, what's that? They're dual-wielding great weapons? They're so strong that they're dual-wielding great weapons? Something that my fucking Croxagors can't do? Well, fuck me, Sally. That's... What the fuck? See, I don't even... What the fuck? That is so ridiculous. These guys better cost a fortune. If these guys don't cost a fortune, that's going to break the game. Like, Greenskins will never lose with this unit. This is retarded. This is so good. Because, yeah, they're anti-infantry, but if you're dual-wielding great weapons, your damage characteristic is probably out the fucking wazoo. And AoE attacks. Great. So, this unit better be tiny. If this unit is not, like, abysmally small compared to most Black Orcs, it's going to be broken as fuck. The Warlord's Boys. Night Goblins. Let me put it this way. This is a unit that I would expect from some of those modders who make the stupid shit, like they... I'm not trying to, like, say what they're doing is dumb. I'm saying that it's stupid as in, like, balance-wise. These are, like... The Crimson Killers are the equivalent to those guys that are, like, want to make the Dragon Slayers, quote-unquote unit. So they make a unit of, like, 5 Slayers that all do the damage of Ungrim. Like, I feel like this is the equivalent to that. You're gonna have a unit of Grimgors. The Warlord's Boys. Night Goblins. Immune to Psychology, Sunder Armor. Great unit. Not... Very balanced good unit. Not too great, not too bad. Immune to Psychology is always really nice on goblins because it reduces the amount of things that can make them break. Sunder Armor, on top of the fact they already have poison attacks, is a really nice combo that's going to make them pretty threatening. And then there's this one. The Venom Queen. An Arachnarok spider who I hope has beautiful coloring, or terrifying coloring, depending on how you feel about spiders, can summon spider hatchling units to battle. Hatchling's unit, excuse me. I have no idea what that means. I'm assuming it's an activatable ability like summoning the dead for the vampire counts, and that you're like, okay, I click on this ability and then I click on the battlefield and spiders appear, or it means that she just starts every battle with an extra unit of spiders. I have no idea how good this is. It sounds really cool, and I really wish we had a character like this in tabletop. One of my biggest regrets for the Greenskin roster is that there was not a Forest Goblin Lord. We had Snackle Grobspit as the Forest Goblin special character, and he's a hero. But he only rides a gigantic spider, which is the medium variant. There's giant spiders, gigantic spiders, and then Arachnarok spiders. Always rubbed me the wrong way that we did not get a Goblin Shaman on a Arachnarok. Which can I just make a quick side note in that CA, I love you guys. Can you please give me the Arachnarok mount for the Goblin Great Shaman? Please. Like, you gave me my corpse cards that have multiple variants, and I appreciate that, and it's awesome. But I would really like to have my 2 Arachnarok variants. Or two. 3? I think it's technically 2. I think you get one or the other. So what I want, CA, is I want my Arachnarok spider with the okay, I know what I want. So I need these things. I need my Arachnarok spider with the web slinger, okay? So I want an Arachnarok spider that has a catapult that shoots spider webs that slow people down or stick them in place but does little damage, but it's really good for maneuvering. And then I want my Goblin Great Shaman to have a fucking Arachnarok mount, like he does in Tabletop, which makes him actually worth taking. And when he gets on the Arachnarok mount, he immediately upgrades it to have... It just comes with a Spider Shrine, which would buff the amount of magic he channels and gives him Loremaster so that he has a reduced cooldown to his abilities. Please, CA, get on that. I need that in my life. Sorry, that was a tangent, but I really am upset that I can't lead my Goblin army with an Arachnarok Lord, and I need it in my life. Anyway... Interesting unit. I have no idea how good it will be. It's an Arachnarok, so it's probably going to be pretty good. And it summons a unit, so it's probably going to be pretty good. That being said, MVPs for the Greenskin roster. The Crimson Killers are definitely in first place as the what the fuck CA are you doing, and who the hell, what the fuck is the balance team smoking. Because clearly they need to pass it out to give the world peace. So the Crimson Killers come in first place. Second place I would give to... the Hammer of Gork, and third place I would give to... I'm going to say the Death Creepers. I think the Death Creepers have a lot of really interesting potential. That being said, honorable mentions would probably be the Broken Tusk Mob, the Venom Queen, just because I don't know how good she'll be, and the Rusty Errors. Anyway, I don't know. These could be pretty good, but if an enemy ranging it looks at them wrong, they die. All right, and that pretty much covers this DLC. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed all my opinions, and you don't think I'm a daft bent or whatever it is they say across the ocean these days. I just love the colors of Clan Engren. That blue, so sexy. Blue and red. Also the Rune Lord. It's a little goofy, but I'm willing to suffer the goofiness just so I can have a Rune Lord. Okay, that pretty much does it for today. I hope you all have a fantastic day. Hopefully I'm back to recording an episode every day. I don't know yet. I'm still trying to just deal with work and life. Thanks. I hope you all have a wonderful day. And Jesus Christ, Gobbler, your charging animation is just the funniest damn thing. Just all right. So yeah, hope you all have a great day. I don't really have anything else to add. Have a good one. Bye-bye.